Welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
What do you guys want to talk about?
Let's give the people what they want. Professional wrestling.
With Mike McGuire.
The happiest Canadian camper in the world. Tell me when I'm telling lies. Give me a hell yeah.
How are you? I hope you're well. I hope you had a good week. I hope you got to watch some wrestling you enjoyed. There was a lot of it, again, as there always is, but really some solid shows across the board here. We'll talk about that and a lot more this week. Welcome to the show if you've never been here before. My name is Mike McGuire. I'm a professional broadcaster for 20 years, basically now. Been involved or around pro wrestling for a majority of that, if not longer. And I also do commentary for the Hart family, including Bret the Hitman Hart, running Dungeon Wrestling out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. A couple things you got to know about this show. It is always free and always about pro wrestling, and we try and give you the most entertaining, most interesting shows here. We got a great team that help puts this show together every single week, and if you're listening, then you're a part of it just by being here. But if you want to support the show, there's ways you can do it for absolutely free. Facebook. Look up Team MOW, McGuire on Wrestling. Our podcast feed, you can subscribe to that easily, McGuireShow.podbean.com. Look up McGuire on Wrestling on YouTube, and I'm very happy to announce that today we've upgraded the store. So the new McGuireShow.com Team MOW shop, prices are a little cheaper, or right now a lot cheaper. And the best part is that it's a lot more streamlined too. So you can find everything from t-shirts, tanks, hoodies, and more stuff being added. The new chair shot, or should I say chair shot design for Mitch from the alternate commentary table that we run on this feed as well. Also for free every week for you. That's up now. There's a few new designs, and that's the only thing we ever ask for you to do if you want to support the show financially, because that, frankly, is going to be the only revenue stream that you directly have to pay for. This show will never ask you for money. We're never going to ask you for a Patreon. We're never going to ask you to subscribe to the show for a cost. That's just the rule here, but we're still going to give you the best, including some of the best names, the biggest experts, great interviews. If you need more details or want to be a part of it on a business end, let me know. McGuireShow@yahoo.com is where you can find me by email, or you can find me on the socials at McGuire Show. Coming up this week, Punk gets time to talk, and talk he does. AEW is making their way back to Canada in the new year. Concern is a top WWE star may be out with injury after this past week. And in for a vacationing Dave Meltzer, Mike Sempervive from Wrestling Observer Live and the Wrestling News joins me this week to talk about all the big stories in wrestling and a lot more. But first, let's take you through some of the biggest stories of the week. This is what we call the 5 Count.
You want to hear the breaking news?
AEW has announced they are in fact returning to Canada in March of 2024. There are some new locations on the map for this tour, and some ones that were on the last one aren't going to be on this one. But we start off on March the 16th. They're going to be in Ottawa at the Canadian Tire Centre. Then they move back to Toronto for a Dynamite and Rampage taping on March the 20th at the Coca-Cola Coliseum, followed by Dynamite and Rampage on March 27th at the Centre Videotron in Quebec City. The Ontario portion of the tour wraps up in London, Ontario, with Dynamite and Rampage being taped on March the 30th. And then the return to Canada is kind of spaced out over the next few months, as April the 10th, they'll be at the Canada Life Centre in Winnipeg, followed by May the 8th, Rogers Place in Edmonton. May the 11th, they follow up in Vancouver for Collision. And then on July the 10th, so again, there's like a 3-month span between all these shows here, but July the 10th, AEW Dynamite and Rampage will be taped as part of the Calgary Stampede at the Scotiabank Saddledome. Well, 2 big events happened last night in North American wrestling. We'll start with NXT Deadline, which was a premium live event. The show started with Shawn Michaels and CM Punk, with a promo teasing Punk's brand choice happening tomorrow night on Raw. Now, here's the rest of the results, so spoiler alert if you haven't watched the show yet. In the pre-show, Axiom defeated Nathan Frazier. The show kicked off officially with the NXT North American Championship match. Dragon Lee, escorted to the ring by Rey Mysterio, getting the win over Dirty Dominic Mysterio, and becoming the new NXT North American champion. In the women's Iron Survivor match, Blair Davenport would get the win over Tiffany Stratton, Lash legend Kalani Jordan, and Fallon Henley. In a one-on-one contest, Carmelo Hayes defeated Lexis King. In the men's Iron Survivor match, Trick Williams got the win over Dijak, Josh Briggs, Braun Breaker, and Tyler Bate. And in a steel cage, Kiana James defeated Roxanne Perez, only to be followed up by the NXT Championship match, Ilya Dragunov defending his title against Baron Corbin. Impact Wrestling ran their final event as Impact Wrestling from a pay-per-view standpoint, as they're changing their name to TNA next month. It was a loaded card. Frankie Kazarian started things off, defeating Sheldon Jean in the pre-show. The World Tag Team Champions, ABC, got the win over Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers. Jody Threat got the win over Alicia Edwards. Tommy Dreamer defended his Digital Media Championship against Diener. Mike Bailey and Trent Seven defeated the Rascals. Jake Something got the win over Jason Hotch. Moose took down Rhino. Trinity and Jordan Grace defeated Deonna Purrazzo and Giselle Shaw. And in the main event, Josh Alexander and Zack Sabre Jr. defeated the Motor City Machine Guns. It was also announced during the show that Trent Seven was officially a part of the Impact or TNA roster. Former AEW Women's World Champion Thunder Rosa says she's ready to get back in the ring. Now, Rosa hasn't wrestled since August 2022 when she revealed that she was suffering from a severe back injury. There's a lot of controversy around that, an interim championship for a while. Nevertheless, we look to the future now, and while appearing on San Antonio's News 4, Rosa says she's just waiting on the call.
It's been a beautiful journey from the lows to the highest. I am ready. I am whenever that call and you know, my boss says, it's time for you to return. Like, I am super excited and I cannot wait to show to the world and all of you fans that have been supporting me all this time that I am ready and I have a lot more to give.
And this past Friday, at Tribute to the Troops on WWE SmackDown, it appeared as though Charlotte Flair suffered some sort of knee injury. The match almost came to an abrupt end. However, Charlotte managed to get through until the finish. After the match, she was seen being escorted from the ring by referees. Fightful Select is reporting that Charlotte has suffered some sort of knee injury, but no official report has come out at this time. Well, yesterday, NXT Deadline took place in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It was this day back in 2007 that WWE held another significant event back in that city. If you don't remember what it was, we'll tell you about it next. Plus, Mike Sempervive from Wrestling Observer Live and the Wrestling News on the way. We're just getting started. Thanks for being here.
You got to stream the alternate commentary table. Every single Saturday, it's brought to you on the McGuire on Wrestling feed. I'm one half of your host, Dimitri Karolis, and I'm here with my partner, Mitch Hondras. Mitch, what is the alternate commentary table?
It's simple. It's the perspective of wrestling from the other side of the railing, the real fans.
That's right, the perspective that you need. You might have a little bit of fun, too. The alternate commentary table. Subscribe free now to the McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed wherever you get your podcast. Cheers!
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, December the 9th, 2023 will be forever now known as the day of NXT's Deadline, a premium live event. However, it was this exact day back in 2007 that WWE celebrated their 15th anniversary of Monday Night Raw, also in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Now, this was a Raw reunion show. There were a lot of names there, like Steve Austin, Eric Bischoff. Cody Rhodes was actually on the card, teaming up with Hardcore Holly, winning the WWE Tag Team Championships from Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch. His dad, Dusty Rhodes, was even there on the call.
Could have new champions. Hook of the leg. He did it. He did it. He did it. He did it.
But for me, the highlight of the night had to be the return of the Gimmick Battle Royal, first made famous at WrestleMania 17. Once again, would see names like Doink the Clown, The Goon, Skinner, Pete Cass, Gilbert, Flash Funk, and Steve Blackman, among others, all falling wayside to IRS, who would be the last man standing in the match until IRS's former tag team partner would come to the ring and offer the tax man a deal.
Apparently IRS and the $1 Million Man have consummated some sort of deal here.
Here is your winner of the Battle Royal, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase.
IRS took a payoff and eliminated himself.
McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, Dave Meltzer away this week, but always happy to bring in some experts, some special guests, and this is always my first turn to guy when it comes to hey, can you fill in for Meltz? And he's been gracious enough to join us once again, ladies and gentlemen, from Wrestling Observer Live, from the Wrestling News, from the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, and from Twitter, where he lives. Sorry, X, where he lives. It is the one and only Mike Sempervive. How are you, sir?
I cannot complain, my friend. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Great to have you back. Thanks for coming in this week while Dave is, soaking up the sun in Hawaii. Poor him. But
the introduction, I'm more special guest than expert, but I'm going to try to do my best to fill in for Dave here while he's out sunning himself and taking a deserved hours off, certainly, before he's on to watching something else.
That's it. Well, again, another busy week in wrestling. A lot of surprises, a lot of not surprises in many ways, and something that I know you report about daily on the Wrestling News, because that's where I hear everything. And if you're not listening to the Wrestling News, you really should subscribe to it. It's absolutely free. There's no ads. There's no BS. It's just this great daily news source that you do. I'm trying to think. Have you missed a show? I don't think you have you?
I missed my first one last Sunday.
Oh, man.
I was under the weather, and I was so frustrated because I think it was like 460 in a row, and it was my stomach was killing me, my head was killing me. It's like, oh God, do I have food poisoning? What is this? And I reached out, and Lou Kippelman, the man, the other voice that you hear on the Wrestling News, was able to jump in and save the day for me. So my Cal Ripken-like streak has now come to an end. Ryan Miner took third on that day, and yep, I'm back to building another streak again. And the worst part was, I was actually, I needed the sleep, and I slept in, but when I got up, it was like 8 o'clock, and I'm usually up at like 5:30 in the morning, but at 8 o'clock, it's like, you know what? I think I felt good enough to do the show, but alas, hey, all good things must come to an end.
Well, you know what? And that's just it. And like I said, I try and catch every single day. Sunday would be the day that I miss because I'm usually doing this show. So it makes more sense. That's the one day that I actually, get my own headlines. But the rest of the time, it's all Semps all the time. So that makes sense why I missed that one. But nevertheless, great to have you here, man. A lot of business news this week. A lot of news coming out from behind the scenes of AEW. I don't know how deep into the weeds we're going to go on this, but just based on what we're hearing is kind of what I wanted to base this week's conversation on. Last week, I did kind of a first for this show, and that was kind of an editorial just based on the reactions, obviously, to CM Punk coming back in WWE and how sometimes the tribalism gets so out of control. Like fans will literally determine whether or not another fan is a good person because they cheer for CM Punk or don't. And I'm like, okay, we're starting to take this stuff way too seriously when we're defining our inner character by which wrestler we cheer for. But I think overall, it's one of those things where we start to hear stories from both camps all the time. Oh, these people in this company are miserable. These people in this company are miserable. This person got let go. These people are miserable. All this stuff. When you're filtering through the news, and I know we talked about this when we first chatted months and months ago, but when you're filtering through the news, how hard is it for you to get through the noise of these opinions and try and find any actual fact in these things?
When it comes to the wrestlers, you kind of take it on an individual basis. Because let's bring up, for example, Britt Baker. Britt Baker had her tweets about, I have not gotten one lick of promo time in all of 2023 on Dynamite, and I'm tired of seeing MJF take up all of this time and this and that. And it's like, well, I can see her being frustrated. She has not had anything happening in her career on TV since Jamie Hayter went down. And it feels like we're in a big holding pattern until Jamie Hayter gets back. I'm sure Britt Baker's is a little frustrated from a professional point of view. I'm sure as a performer, she wants to be out there on TV. So when it comes in her case, you look at it and you go, okay, a little bit of reality there, but also one of the people that's with MJF taking up all this TV time is your man, Adam Cole. So, you look at it and you go, okay, there's probably some truth there on both sides, and she's using her social media to tweak a little bit and to bring reality into, a possible storyline that could be coming. Tony Khan seems to endorse that. He seems to welcome it. He is a child of this generation. He grew up in wrestling message boards. He grew up on forums and all that sort of stuff. So he likes a lot of this stuff and is fine with it, whereas WWE cracks down on it. But there are cases that when they're said publicly, you really just have to kind of go back to your Rolodex of knowledge on what you know about that person, their situation, their relationships. Also see, okay, has anybody else said anything that mimics this or about a certain subject that goes in on it or any further? And you just kind of have to try to take it all. And I don't want to say mash it into a grain of salt, but you just kind of have to take it and put it away and almost ignore it. If you're talking about the news, you almost have to ignore it because a lot of it doesn't matter. And a lot of it is just, we're in an era where you hear everything and everybody's got an opinion and everybody knows somebody in the wrestling business now. You know, somebody knows somebody that knows somebody or knows people directly. And it's a different world that we're in right now. So when it comes to the wrestling news, it's really easy because we don't mess with any rumor or conjecture or any nonsense. We don't come up with our own storylines or figuring out where things are going to go. That's for Dave and Brian. That's for John and Way. That is for Rich and Joe at Voices of Wrestling. It's for what we do on Wrestling Observer Live. It's what you do on here a lot of the time, you know, that sort of stuff. And that's great. But when it comes to a lot of it, it's just people talking and it's people venting and it's like Seth Rollins. You saw it, this week with Seth Rollins now coming out and doing the interview with Sports Illustrated, where he is venting on CM Punk. And I believe everything that he said as far as his feelings go and why he's upset and why he took the tack that he did with CM Punk and how he felt when CM Punk threw it back at him and all that stuff. But then there's also the part where they're going to be working together here real soon. So,
well, that was the most interesting part of that interview is where he walked it back a bit and he said, it's on me a bit for how I reacted in that moment, because I found it fascinating that he actually regretted getting so overblown and everybody saw the footage of him, flipping off Punk and everything else and losing his mind and not saying that he doesn't deserve to feel that way one way or the other. Again, we're not him.
But the thing is, I don't believe it for a second that was not real. I mean, that was real, because part of it in the SI interview where it turns into, to me, pro wrestling, instead of just being, here are my thoughts, whether they play into a storyline or not, it was, I didn't know what was going to happen. Right. Okay, if that's the case, which Dave has reported that they did know what was going to happen, I got to be honest, you look really bad then in that case. In fact, you can make all the fun in the world if you want for Seth Rollins. If you really didn't know about it and were so upset that you marched across out to the floor, out of the ring, and needed to be held back by Corey Graves and Michael Cole as you flipped the middle finger and, shouted a bunch of expletives, and you didn't just go right down there to see him. I mean, come on. I'm not buying that for a second. I don't. I really don't. And the person that actually pulled all of that off the best that night was Drew McIntyre, who never said anything about it. Nothing. All he did was get his stuff and went. And so, again, that to me opened up more of a question on what is this guy so upset about right now? Is he possibly upset? And I don't believe that he was, but he played it a lot better than I think Seth Rollins did. So, and I know I probably didn't answer your question at all.
No, you did actually.
I'm trying to parse through some of this stuff.
Which is really funny though, because you did, and you basically saying that, you cut through the noise, you try and find the fact, and that's what you report on. So that to me answers the question. I guess we should shift to some of the stories out of this week, though, and just talk about some of the things that we know are certain. For example, one of the big things, obviously, where I'm based up in Canada, AEW announcing another cross-Canada tour. I noticed the two worst dates in the entire tour, Saskatchewan, were not added to this one, and they have added their first Vancouver, BC date for this coming summer or spring, I guess. This is following a trend where it seems to me anyways, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but it seems that AEW is leaning more towards especially the UK market for All In, but even by coming back to Canada so soon, because this isn't really that long since they were last here.
No, and it's not like they're knocking it out of the park when it comes to attendance or any of that stuff either.
And that's what I'm wondering. Are they relying more, you think, on non-U.S. revenue going into next year, or are they just hoping that maybe the turnout is better? Because honestly, like, the financial situation in this country isn't much better than anywhere else in the world right now when it comes to cost of living and everything else. Yeah,
and they also like, they have a habit of going back to the same places in the same cities and the same over and over again. And I'm not saying that they're exactly doing that here, but that seems to be an issue for them. I think you need to establish yourself in the Canadian market, and now seems to be, when you have Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho and Adam Copeland and Christian, like, to me, you can't do anything with Quebec. Nothing. Unless you raised Johnny Rougeau from the dead. Like with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, WWE owns Quebec. They always have. They probably always will. But for the rest of the country, they have to. They have to try to at least beat the doors and to try to get Collision onto a network and to try to rally up people to push to get that on, so they can go to these shows and then watch themselves on TV, which is an issue with having Collision and Rampage still, right?
Yeah, exactly. We still don't have those on actual legitimate broadcast in Canada. So
I think they have to just keep beating the doors down there, and to me, run the right buildings, because that's another issue that they've had. And again, look, Tony Khan with his connections, maybe you get a cheap rent, and no, you don't want to go to the worst building in the city or anything like that. But when you're putting 5,000 people in a 20,000 seat building, something's wrong there. There's got to be a college you can go to. There's got to be somewhere you can go and, maximize things better. And again, they make it look really good. Sometimes it doesn't sound really good, but they tend to make it look good. But still, you can't keep doing that over and over again. They are really reliant, though, on, I think, what they're doing in the UK, and the UK market has always been open, or at least more competitive. Yeah, WWE is WWE and has been for decades there, but Impact always did well there. TNA, they had there were moments in time where they were quite close. In fact, had better TV. That's what I think. It's still. And because you don't go there all the time, are they going to sell 80,000 tickets again? No. Are they going to sell 50,000, I think, easy at higher ticket prices? Yeah, they absolutely are. So I think they are relying on that. And I can see them, much like WWE, maybe quietly, because, there's going to be a little backlash for it, but go ahead, get into the site game business. This is what boxing had for years. You got a site fee from Caesars or from the Garden or for whenever you're going to run your show.
Right.
If this is something that's going to bring in a bunch of money for you, bring in a bunch of money for you. So I could see that happening with AEW too, because, look, you got to, with the exception of the TV deal, you got to try to bring in as much revenue as possible from as many sources as possible.
Well, and it's funny that you go to the money part here now, because there was something on Dynamite that I listened to a lot of shows this week, a lot of review shows, and everybody was saying the same thing that I was feeling when I heard it announced. And that was Tony Schiavone, poor Tony, God love the guy, but poor Tony Schiavone trying to announce not just the ticket numbers, but, and this felt so weird to hear, but they were announcing how much money in British pounds or US dollars was actually made to date. This to me just smacks of being incredibly tone deaf in a time where, again, we just talked about it, cost of living is through the roof everywhere you go. Everybody's struggling right now, and people want to go and be entertained. That was the one thing about pro wrestling in the past, was that pro wrestling was always kind of the every man, every woman event you could go to. WWE still runs $20 tickets in a lot of markets. And AEW will eventually knock their tickets down redonkulously by the time they actually get to show date and a lot of these things. But when you're in the middle of an economic crunch, it's the holiday season. I mean, that had to be a Tony Khan call. I don't see any of the commentators going, hey, we should talk about how much money was made, because that's never been done in wrestling before, to my knowledge anyways, as part of promoting sales for the show. Did that make any sense to you?
No, but that's the new era we're in. And I'm not exactly, you say it's tone deaf, but I don't think it was malicious. I just think that because of what we're in and because the tickets and we got this gate and people, that's important to us as far as being really inside and heavy into this stuff. It's important to the fans that would listen to this show online or that listen to Observer Live every day and are members of the site. Like, okay, that is a benchmark. People like benchmarks, and that's why we still talk about ratings at this point, because it's something that people are just, it's built into them at this point. And look at WWE. Look at all the press releases they send out. We went to Puerto Rico. We did this and made this. And Tony Khan, obviously, Chicago, The Last Dance, $1 million gain. Mm-hmm. And that's cool for the press release. That's cool to say after the event was over, thank you, fans, because you did this. But again, I don't think it was malicious, but I think in the want to hype this thing up and make it an event and make it big and make it seem gigantic, I think that was a misstep, because people right now are hurting. And again, people aren't, not everybody is dumb here or anything like that. But it's just one of those things. I don't know. It's just one of those things that could have been done better and just could have been left alone. And not everybody watching your show is going to be impressed by that or even care about it in the least, because they ain't going. And odds are they're going to watch it on pay-per-view, and those folks are going to find out they're going to be buying more and more of those if it's up to WBD.
Well, and that's the other thing too, right? Is that it's not like the tickets are the only way you can watch this show. It's not like that's the only way they're going to be making money. It seemed very odd, like you said, to have it in the preamble leading up to a show, especially this far out. But also just having it even mentioned at all just seemed
even
really,
announcing
really
that they did 27,000 tickets or whatever it was. It's like, I don't know. It's just I look at things differently, where that would not have been my benchmarks on what we're doing here. Pre-sale numbers, and to me, no. I just not for me.
Fair enough. Well, sticking with one more thing with AEW here and possibly WWE, or as we've seen now, he will be making a stint in Impact Wrestling. Okada is apparently up for grabs here, and he's going to be making an Impact stint in Vegas, it looks like. And where do you think he ends up? Because New Japan seems to be the place that a lot of big names are leaving for either greener pastures or even getting a break from for a while. Do you think he makes sense coming to WWE in an NXT or even on one of the main shows? Would it make more sense to put him in AEW with an already bloated roster that has many people complaining about not getting TV time? Would he fall into the abyss, kind of like Jay White has a bit? I mean, Jay White came in with Thunder and Fury for a week, and since then has kind of just coasted along since. As someone who tracks the Japanese market, especially with the wrestling news, I want to know, where do you think would be the best for Okada to show up?
Depends on how you're looking at this for Okada. If it's about his money and his comfort of living in the United States, it's WWE, clearly. I mean, they can pay the most amount of money. They can get you in. And again, this is not like Tony Khan can't or anything like that, but WWE can outbid everybody. They can probably open doors to him through Endeavor. That would be a little more difficult for Tony Khan. They can open doors for Okada's wife, who is a voice actress, because that's the thing. He's going to have to uproot his entire family, which is a young family, and come over and not really be able to go back, I don't think, to New Japan, certainly not at the level that he's at now. So if you make a move over here, it's a big move. It's like all these guys jumping on, Otani when it comes to where he's going to go. And like all the pundits are pissed off that it's not a bigger deal. It's like there's no cutoff, the wrong cutoff dates when it comes to free agency and the winter meetings. Don't blame Otani. This is like legacy defining for him. And it would be for Okada too, in the wrestling point of view, because you've now said basically to everybody in Japan, I've done as much as I can do here. I can't go any further. And some would say that's true. I can only make so much money here, which he won't say, but is also true. Mm-hmm. Sure, Bushiroad's got a lot of money. They ain't got Khan and TKO money. They just don't. No. So, like, if he's going to come over here, like, WWE lifestyle-wise, for the schedule, for all that, would be best. For if he's still about his art, it's AEW. Because at the very least, one, you still have a door open to go back to Japan. That's another thing. Say he wants to come over here, but his family doesn't. Makes it a lot easier if you're with AEW, where you can go back over there. I thought that was going to be important with Will Ospreay, too, for a guy that has resisted coming to America for a long time. To me, coming in through AEW, and if he has any issues or anything like that, again, it's better, I think, that way. He can go work for Progress or Rev Pro in the UK if he wants to. He can do things in Australia. There's other places he can go. So for Okada, if it's still about his career, I think AEW is the right place, even looking at what happened to Jay White. Same thing when it comes to Julia, too, because I think she would be far better served going to WWE than going to AEW. I think AEW needs her more, when it comes to the star power, especially if they miss out on Mercedes Moné and Sasha Banks goes back to WWE. But, at that point, that's it. If you go to WWE, that's it. If you go to AEW, you have some other advantages there. But again, at the end of the day, how will you be used? That's very interesting. I think that he stays with New Japan. That's what I think. I think he gets a lot of money. I think there's enough that he can do there. And I think that there is going to be a lot of clinging onto his leg, begging him not to go. And I think they're going to throw everything at him that, the good, the bad, and the ugly to throw at him on why he can't leave New Japan Pro Wrestling. I still think there's a lot he could do there. I think there's a lot he could do in Japan, and I don't know if he comes over here to the States in either AEW or in WWE. I'll be sad because we've lost the Okada that we had, and that's just it's like Nakamura. There was nothing else for him to do. It was time for him to come over here, and if he wants to surf all day, awesome.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Maybe he's like Nakamura and he just wants to come surf.
And if his body is jacked, and again, everybody in New Japan is tore up, and you see how Naito drags himself around and Hiromu with a broken neck. Okada's been banged up and hurt. And if there's, that schedule in WWE, not having to do a G1, being able to maximize, when you're on a WrestleMania weekend and Survivors and things like that, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I still think he stays over there, but if it's about cashing out and I'm towards the end, he's going to WWE. But again, if this is about art or anything like that, he's going to AEW. And we see people make that decision. Look, Bryan Danielson, because again, it's more about the art in AEW than he could have stayed in WWE. But there's more he wanted to do here. Adam Copeland, the same sort of way. There's more those guys still wanted to accomplish. We'll see when it comes to Okada.
Well, and that's just it. You mentioned TKO money, and that was something that I did want to dive into a little bit as well, as someone who, again, follows the daily business. The TKO stock price has been interesting ever since it was introduced. Its original IPO dropped significantly since day one, basically, and they've kind of been floating around that $70 to $75 range here. A lot of people are saying this is a highly underperforming stock at this point. What seems to be the struggle? Is it the lawsuits, or is there anything that people are attesting or accrediting the underperformance of this stock to? Because WWE just keeps talking about record business. UFC, we know, are still selling pay-per-views. So what seems to be the hinge here on TKO as a group share?
I think it just may have plateaued, both groups, as far as public lust for the for that part of the dollar. I mean, again, if you had that kind of money, I would probably buy 100 shares of TKO at $75 because I think it will still go up. Just the fact that you have the UFC and the pay-per-views that they're able to sell, and the amount of money that is derived from those, and they're not going to, there's going to be a bid at some point for their rights, I believe. I'm not sure exactly where they stand with ESPN, but they have a library. They have their streaming aspect. And again, whoever picks them up, you also get an extra $80 a month from however many pay-per-views you're going to sell, So I think it's a lot to do with just in general apathy. And I just think of malaise in the business world towards the stock, and things were coming together. That sale happens under a cloud with Vince McMahon, and maybe some people, while they wouldn't say it to his face, in that world, maybe they've tired of a little bit of that and they don't want to, go as much in as they had before. You have this happening at a time where their TV deals, have plateaued. Because they were talking about, 1.5 times, 1.6, 1.7, who knows? And they had Nick Khan out there beating the band at those media conferences talking about, man, this is what we can do. And it felt like he was trying to rally, like Apple could be involved and Amazon. And, we're not going to tell you the numbers for Peacock, but, if we told them anybody, NBC Universal, we do a lot for them. We help build Peacock and we could help build you too. As all of that is happening, Rupert Murdoch and the Fox guys are telling everybody that asks them, why did you not bid for SmackDown? Why did you pull back on WWE? Because they couldn't get us the numbers that they promised. They promised us a 1.0 and 18 to 49. We haven't come close to that. We set them into position around Thursday programming, them on Friday, college football on Saturday, the NFL on Sunday. Didn't work. And yeah, sure, it was the number one show on Friday TV, but then you look at the advertising revenue that you derive from that. You look at advertisers who still don't want to touch professional wrestling and don't look well upon its clientele, whether they have money or not. And I just think it's a general malaise. And UFC right now, what big fights are happening? We lost the John Jones fight we were supposed to have with Stipe. That's not going to happen. In the fight world, there's a lot of good fights, but that's been a problem with boxing for a long time is, unless you have a big player, you don't really have anything. You don't have anything for the business. So I just think it's simply a matter of there are so many other things out there at better buys, I think, that's what Wall Street's looking at. And they are very bearish on what's coming for the WWE's media rights deals. You saw how they reacted to SmackDown. I mean, honestly, I think anybody listening to this show sees the amount that they got for it and went, geez, really? Somebody's going to complain about that? But that's
the way business works.
Yeah, when you're in money and that big of money, I mean, that's the way that cookie crumbles. And two, there could be an issue because we still don't know yet. The SEC is still looking into things. You had the Southern District of New York still looking into Vince McMahon. They had that raid over the summer. We don't know if that's going to lead to anything. And the thing is, we won't know if that leads to anything because they never tip their hand until they're ready to go. So again, I think it's just a cloud of all of that nonsense I just talked about that's raining on their parade.
All right, last thing with Mike Sempervive. Again, you can catch him on Wrestling Observer Live, the wrestling news, and really just follow him on Twitter. If you're not doing it yet, at Sempervive, do so because always a great follow. But Mike, I got to ask you, now that we've gone through our usual week of lamenting about the world of wrestling, give me something you yourself are looking forward to over the next maybe couple months here even, because to me, I mean, with the return of CM Punk, with such a top-heavy WWE roster right now of really strong star power here. To me, the Royal Rumble might be one of the most interesting we've had in years as far as that goes. But that's the low-hanging fruit for me to say, oh, the Rumble's going to be great. I know that. But talk about what you're looking forward to over the next few months here.
I can't boo-hoo that at all. I mean, the Royal Rumble's always, the Royal Rumble, unfortunately, historically, recently has been so disappointing because, as you grow up, you love those even if they're dumb. You love the surprises that come in. It's the honky tonk, man. What Booker T is getting to the ring from the announcers. Like, give me dumb and give me faces I haven't seen in a while. And this year, who knows what you're going to get in the Rumble? And forget about the men's side, because we know who they have on the men's side. It's the women's side that's really interesting. We haven't seen Jay Cargill yet. CM Punk's back. Could we see AJ Lee? We've seen Mickie James in the Rumble before. Nick Aldis is gainfully employed right now. Could we see Mickie James show up? What about Tiffany Stratton? Who are you going to bring up from NXT? So to me, there is a lot of interest in that and what could possibly come out of that and who could possibly show up. And it's always the way we launch into WrestleMania. So it's a great time of year. And I a lot of times check out. Obviously, I do wrestling 7 days a week, every single day, multiple times a day in multiple different forms, whether it be Mid-Atlantic from 1983 or Korakuen Hall from yesterday. You know, I always have a lot of wrestling in, but I try to, I don't pay heavy attention as a fan to the real world tag leagues that are going on in December, kind of, unless something's going on with Survivor Series, that can be important. But a lot of it, I kind of downplay a little bit, because once the tag league is over, which it is wrapping up for New Japan right now, we have Stardom coming up with their big end of the year show. They have their big show at the end of the year, and now they've added one right before the Tokyo Dome. We have a big show coming up from All Japan. We have Noah. We have all New Japan and Noah working together, and all three of those companies working together for what's been the secondary Tokyo Wrestle Kingdom show that they've had, and I assume they're doing that this year. CMLL has been hot, and the Friday Night Arena Mexico shows have been crazy fun to watch. So, all of this stuff is going to be happening here in the next couple of weeks, and then you hit the Royal Rumble and you just take off, hopefully into WrestleMania. And this year, there are just so many people, with Orton back, with Punk back, with the company doing as well as it is, with Logan Paul, with and other outside people there. Who knows? Bad Bunny could show up. Roman Reigns is right now under glass waiting to be brought back out again. Cody, everything, they're hot. And that, again, not even talking about all the women that they have. There's and my partner on the Big Audio Nightmare would kill me, Adam Summers, to say this, but yes, Stardom, there is for the different style of wrestling, for that style of wrestling, they are far better than WWE. But when you look at the WWE women's roster, and you have Bianca and Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair and Kairi Sane and Io and Bayley, and you go down the line, and there's a real possibility, from what it feels like, that Sasha Banks comes back into that fold as well too, and possibly Julia. There's another name who it wouldn't be towards the first quarter of the year, at least till probably March or so, till she could actually debut. But March, April, maybe after Mania, I mean, it's pretty impressive. Again, you may not love the structure of the matches or anything like that, but these women are stars. And Rhea Ripley can be as big of a star for that company, maybe not Roman Reigns level, but boy, she could be up there, and maybe to the Becky Lynch level. I mean, to me, Becky's proven it with ratings and things like that. But I think if given the opportunity, man, Rhea Ripley could actually pull that same thing off. So I can't complain about a thing this time of year. I love this time of year, and I love going into the beginning of the year. Again, refreshed at the beginning of the year. I think it's fantastic.
The one thing you did not mention in all of that, and I'm sorry we don't have time, was the Continental Classic, and who was going to win that?
Yeah, that's
by design. I don't know. Mike Sempervive, he's going to get the ads now for that one. But Mike, always a pleasure talking to you, man. Love chatting with you. It's been too long since we've done this, so
I know it.
But
I know it.
Keep up the great work with the wrestling news. Keep up the great work with everything you're doing, because you're one of my favorite listens everywhere, because you give it to it like you gave it to us today. So thank you again for filling in. All the best this holiday season too, my man. And let's keep in touch. All right.
You too, Mike. Thank you, sir.
McGuire on Wrestling.
Big thanks to Mike Sempervive for being a part of this week's show. Again, you can catch him on the Wrestling News and Wrestling Observer Live, where he gave us a shout out there as well. Real pleasure having him on this week. And Dave will be back next week, and we'll have more voices joining the show in the new year. That's all I can tell you right now. But more things are happening. and it's a great time. So thank you again for being here. Coming up, before we go, we're going to talk a little more about the possibility that maybe wrestling promoters, one in particular, might be a little tone deaf to what's going on in the world right now. Thanks for being here. We're back in just seconds.
This is McGuire on Wrestling. Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Final segment of the show today. Thank you so much for being here. Mentioned it earlier on in the show, but wanted to redirect you to the new Team MOW shop, which also features shirts for the alternate commentary table and new designs for our friends coming in from across the pond as well, and more. We just kind of got it relaunched here because I liked what we were doing with the original shop, but anywhere I can try and save you a buck, I'm going to do that because, again, this show has never been about making money. It's been about giving you the best stuff we can, and that includes, if you want to support by getting some merch, giving you the best we can there as well. So if I can save you a couple bucks, save you some shekels, there is a sale going on right now that is actually put on by the provider. So the nice thing is that, you know, we still get our cut, but you can get shirts for $15 US a piece right now, and it actually works out to really just way less than it was with the old shirts before. And if you order multiple now, then you can actually save yourself some more money on the shipping because it gets all lumped into one thing. So I bring that up not just because of the fact that that's a neat deal, and yeah, it supports the show. But I also bring it up because money is on the forefront of a lot of people's minds these days. And I've been there. I'll be there again, most likely in my life, where sometimes you really got to tighten the belt and you got to look for different ways to try and make money or hang on to money. That said, we still want to enjoy our lives. We still want to do what we're doing. I'm not bringing this up to be a downer. In fact, if anything, I'm hoping that perhaps people in the promotions business and the entertainment business heed that reminder as we go into the new year, because globally, and leave the politics out of it here because nobody has a solution for it, but globally, we have been facing a cost of living crisis. It's been harder and harder to keep gas in our vehicles, or food on the table, or healthier, fresh food into our bodies. It's just expensive to live these days. Everything costs more and more. So trust me, when I'm telling you, hey, if you want to support the show financially and buy a t-shirt, I realize you might not be in a position to drop an extra 20, 30 bucks right now. And that's totally fine. That's not a concern of anybody's, nor should it be. But when you get to the point of being a major entertainment spectacle, and we've heard about these super shows around the world. I mean, look at how much money Taylor Swift is raking in, and good on her. That tour was a monster hit. But the big thing about the cost of entertainment is that that's still, for a lot of us, our only outlet to get out and do things. Even going to the movies costs money. So do you want to go to the movies, or do you want to go see live wrestling? If you're a wrestling fan, do you want to go to a TV taping and be a part of the show? I think that's probably on the forefront of our mind. As soon as AEW announced the Canadian tour, I'm like, oh, wow, looks like I'm going across the country again. The funniest thing about it then was that was the only thing I was doing was a radio and podcast show about wrestling, and I was not making any significant money at all doing it, and I didn't care. I would do this for free, just like I've been doing for the last 8 months, because that's how much I love doing this. Yes, my radio company is getting on board and supporting it. Yes, other companies are getting on board and supporting it. Yes, it's growing thanks to you. But guys, I'm never going to tell you the nuts and bolts of it. I'm never going to tell you how much money we're making or losing here, because frankly, that's not why you come here. To promote how much money is being made should never mean anything to anyone except the people who are making that money. Now, hear me out. I understand. Ohtani in the Major League Baseball world just got that $700 million U.S. contract. Good for him. That's a significant amount of money. That's a major athlete. Okay, how are they going to pay that? We know how they're going to pay for it. But more importantly, we're showing, okay, this is how high the race got to sign this guy. That's different from what I'm talking about here. Because it was when this part of AEW's Dynamite this past week happened that a lot of people were set off by it. And poor Tony. I love Tony Schiavone. I really do. I hope to have him on the show one day. But poor Tony Schiavone, he kind of trips over the stats here because you can almost tell they're being fed into his ear, say this, say this, say this. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, why? Why are you saying this?
This event in Wembley, 9 months away, we've already sold over 3,000 pounds, over $3 million. $4 million. Tickets still on sale.
The official number, for anybody that cares, is $4 million at the gate so far for AEW's All In 2 coming up next year at Wembley Stadium. 3 million pounds. Do the conversion however it is. It's a lot of damn money. Here's the thing that stands out to me, though. Who cares? Who cares? In fact, if anything, I really don't care because it's none of my business. We talk about AEW profitability on this show from a business standpoint once in a while because I'm genuinely curious if people think that company's actually made money. But when it comes down to how much actual money you're making just off of fans who are choosing to spend, in some cases, whatever little money they have left to support your show, the only thing out of your mouth should be thank you. Thank you to everyone that has supported AEW's All In so far. Tickets are on sale now, and of course, we still got lots of time to go before it, so there'll still be tickets there for you. You don't need to go on TV and tell us that you just made $4 million when you're a certified son of a billionaire. And again, I like AEW. I love going to the shows. I love seeing wrestlers I've never seen before. Sometimes it's a little longer than I'd like, but nevertheless, it's a great show, and I'm very happy for them. I'm happy that friends of mine, especially across Canada, are going to have shows to work in that medium. They'll be on Ring of Honor matches, or they'll be in dark matches that happen before the show even gets started, because that is what professional wrestling is all about. Still having those tryout moments and seeing local stars that you know be in the ring. Maybe they get squashed by somebody, but who cares? You know who they are. That's awesome. And All In 2, for all intents and purposes, I think should be a smash success of a show again. I think it'll be one of the most watched shows again of the year. I think we'll do another recap for it like we do here for select shows once in a while. But when it comes down to it, we don't need to know how much money you made in dollars and cents when some people are deciding whether or not it's groceries or power, or groceries or heat in their home. So brag about a show. Brag about gigantic turnout for the show. Brag about how you have the best wrestlers in the world, the best wrestling in the world. But please, even if you're a minor indie show and you finally broke even for the first time, don't tell us how much money you made. It's tone deaf and it's just unnecessary. If there's one thing I've learned in my life, being around some of the most famous people in the world and also being around people who think they're something because they got a little bit of money, it's the ones that are the biggest in the world never talk about that stuff. Some of the most successful people I know, I don't have an idea what they make on their bankroll other than know they're doing all right. And I respect them for that because they got nothing to gloat about. They're not showing off. They're happy for themselves, and they can have those moments where they celebrate privately, but they're not telling the whole world, hey, I just made X number $100,000 doing this. You know why? Because it's a classy thing to keep to yourself. It really is. If anybody has to sit there and tell you how well they're doing and how much money they have, they don't really have that much money, and they're not doing that well. That being said, we got a lot of great wrestling coming back to Canada. There's a lot of great wrestling every single week to watch, to view, to support. Hey, cheap plug here, but it's an important one. Dungeon Wrestling this coming Saturday. It's an afternoon show in Calgary, Alberta. I'm going to be there. The Voros twins facing the Billington Bulldogs for the Dungeon Wrestling Tag Team Championships and a bunch of other great matches. It's going to be an amazing, amazing time. So if you're in Calgary, make the plan, make the time. You know what? come before the show. Go to Hitman's Bar. Get yourself a lunch. I can tell you right now, one of Brett's favorite things, maybe I'm talking out of school here, but whatever. He loves the grilled cheese they got on the menu. I've had it with him. It's delicious. Then you go over to the Victoria Pavilion, the historic Victoria Pavilion in Calgary, Alberta. You watch some great meat and potato wrestling, and then you cap off the night with us. It'll be a great time. Until then, or until next week, which, by the way, oh yeah, alternate commentary table, Daddy's coming home again. We're going to be all together next week right here on the show. Until then, as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the show. Until next time, play safe, drive safe. Bis ya.